Happyslapped by a Jellyfish by Karl Pilkington. Chapter 3. Ibiza. This is the first place I went abroad. I went with me mate Mark. He'd borrowed his boss's apartment for free, so all we had to sort out were the flights. I borrowed one of me mum and dad's cases, which was far too big for what I was taking. I suppose this is why, when I got to Ibiza airport, I was stopped and asked to open my bag for inspection. I had nothing to worry about though, because I packed it myself. I knew there was nothing in it that would cause problems. So I thought. I opened with the lid towards me, while keeping my eye on the Spanish inspector. I noticed his eyebrows raise. I looked down and saw a garden gnome. It was one of me mum's. She loves garden gnomes and has them all over the house. She doesn't leave them outside, as she says she feels guilty seeing their little cold faces when she closes the curtains at night. The one in my case was the one that usually sat by the fireplace. I tried to explain all this to the Spanish man, but none of it made sense to him. He just smashed it up to see if it contained anything. It didn't. Then he let me go. I called my mum to ask what she was playing at, and she said she put it there to look after me while I was away. I told her it had been smashed, and she said, "That's okay. I've also put a gnome on a key ring on one of your socks." Here I was on my first holiday abroad, and I've wasted the first 25 minutes of being on the island talking about gnomes. I can't blame them for smashing it. Ibiza was known as a bit of a druggy party island back then. Most young travellers were probably carrying some sort of drug, apart from me. I went packed up like one of those ground force teams. I've never really taken drugs. I was put off by people on our local estate in Manchester who messed up their lives with them. I remember a girl in my history class who stood up halfway through the lesson and started screaming, saying that she was being chased by a giant Mars bar. She'd taken magic mushrooms at lunchtime, so I always avoided drugs, apart from the time I went to a music quiz at a local pub. On all the pub tables there was some little homemade chocolates wrapped up in foil. I love chocolate. I ate all the ones on our table. After the quiz, I went round to the other tables and asked people if they were having their chocolates. Most of them said no. I was working my way through all the chocolate like a fat Russian kid in Willy Wonka. It wasn't till I got in the cab at the end of the night, I couldn't tell the driver where I wanted to go, that I realised something weren't right. The driver told me to get out. I was sat on the curb with a few people from the pub came out and told me I'd been stuffing my face with dope chocolate. I didn't like not being in control of my body, so I've never touched anything since. We eventually got to Mark's boss's apartment. It was a bit knackered looking on the outside. Weeds had grown to about 4 foot around the front door, and all the white paint had bubbled in the heat and started flaking off. Still, it was free and we'd only be using it somewhere to sleep. Mark found the key under an overgrown plant pot, where his boss said it would be, and in we went. I'd like to say the first thing that hit us was the stunning view from the balcony across the green hills of Ibiza Island, but it wasn't. It was the smell of human shit. It was unbelievable. You couldn't escape it. Even if you held your breath, you felt like it was still entering your body through your pores. My eyes were stinging from it. We opened one window in the living area and went into the bathroom to see if there was another window in there, so we could get a draft going to clean the air. That's where the problem was coming from. The toilet was half full of old poo. It couldn't be flushed away because a hard crust had formed on top, like one of those caramel puddings where they burnt the top with a welding torch. Still, what did we expect? It was free. I emptied my case, and then found that it was too big to put in any of the wardrobes, so I shoved it under the bed. This disturbed a nest of little green lizards. I don't know if green was their natural colour or just the effect of being locked up in a room smelling of shit for Christ knows how long. We'd pinned open the front door, and they all ran out gasping for fresh air. We went for a walk to have a look around and to try to find a shop that sold bleach and a hammer to break the hard crust. The area seemed alright. Nice bars and places to eat. It wasn't easy finding a place that sold Domestos though. Because one, most travellers didn't need it, and two, the shop assistants weren't familiar with the brand and thought it was the name of a local restaurant. We found a Spanish version of strong bleach and headed back to tackle the blocked toilet. The smell hadn't gone. We poured the whole bottle in and left to do its magic while we went for a drink in a bar. One of my teeth started to ache. I've never had much luck with my teeth. I don't think my dentist was much good. When I was younger, he put fillings on all my back teeth, saying it would give them extra protection. He did the same with most kids. He'd look in your mouth and straight away his favourite line, "If there's a hole, it needs filling." Everything was done by knocking you out with gas back then, which left you feeling sick and gave you a bad headache. Most people don't suffer from toothache, never understand how bad the pain is. You can't think about anything other than the pain the tooth is causing you. The only time I've ever had worse pain was when I had kidney stones. The pain from them was that bad. I agreed to have painkillers inserted up my arse in hospital by a gay nurse. I'm guessing his favourite saying was the same as the dentist's. Luckily, it didn't have to happen, as they found me an empty bag in A&E where they could inject me with morphine. We went back to the shop where he'd got the bleach and bought some painkillers, but they didn't have any effect. I ended up having to get off my head with whiskey so I couldn't feel the pain. We got back to the apartment. The top layer in the toilet was floating a little, but underneath it seemed just as hard, so we decided to let the bleach continue doing its work through the night. I got into bed and saw a lizard on the ceiling. It was a big one, about the length of one of those Toblerones you can only get at airports. Normally, I'd have to get something like that out of the room before I sleep, but I was that tired from the drink and the fumes from the bleach I just nodded off. In the morning, the lizard had gone, but the toothache was back. Mark was already up and ready for the first day of sun. His first words were, "Morning has broken, but the second layer of shit in the toilet ain't." He looked a joke. He had Speedos on, a pair of shades, and some flip-flops. He was white. He was almost see-through like a jellyfish. I'm not happy walking around with next to now on, 'cause my body isn't that impressive to look at. I'm glad I wasn't around years ago when people had statues of themselves made, as you always had to be naked for them. Besides, it's never so hot that I can't handle wearing a t-shirt. We went to the nearest bar so I could get some alcohol to numb the pain. Mark sat in the sun on a plastic chair with his legs apart, while I stayed in the shade with a whiskey in my hand, watching Only Fools and Horses on the bar's TV. We used that bar every morning for the first few whiskies of the day. I ended up watching every episode of Only Fools and Horses, and Fawlty Towers. We didn't get up to much during the day, we just wandered around. I nearly got killed a few times in Ibiza by mopeds. All the people out there use them no matter how old they are. It's quite normal to see 3 people on a moped, and I once saw a farmer riding one with a goat stuck in a crate on the back. Nobody bothers wearing all the clobber that people in this country wear when they get on a motorbike. In Ibiza, they believe that if you die, it was meant to be. On the corner of every street there's a bunch of fresh flowers marking someone's death patch. I think that's why islands look so pretty. If it wasn't for all the flowers from all the deaths, Ibiza wouldn't be so green. You can hire mopeds if you're on holiday, but I didn't bother, because my mum doesn't like me going on motorbikes. A fella on a motorbike once hit a lamppost at high speed on the main road outside our house. My mum made the ambulance men a cup of tea, and they said his head was in good shape, as he had worn a good helmet. The only problem was that his head wasn't attached to the body anymore. Mark was always looking at porn in the shops. They don't hide it in the shops abroad, it's just there, spread out for everyone to see. They even have rude stuff on the counter, next to the Kit Kats. Every other shop, Mark would see what rude mags they had in. It started to do my head in after a while. It's getting a bit like that here now. I was buying a paper from Tesco in Soho recently, and they had Gay Times placed in the middle of TV Quick and Chat magazine. I've never really understood gay magazines. Why do fellas need pictures of knobs when they've got their own to look at? In the last few days of the holiday, I was getting a bit bored. So I said we should buy some cards if there's loads of good games we can play with them. Mark nipped out of the bar to get some and was back minutes later. I've had my eye on these for a few days, he said. He'd bought cards with rude photos on them, 52 pictures of filth. They looked like they'd been taken in the early 70s. I'd never seen so much body hair on a woman, and I still can't get the Queen of Spades out of my head. The fella on that one should have been a gymnast. Things weren't going too bad until a gust of wind blew the 7 of diamonds off our table and onto a paella that the woman sat next to us was eating. She didn't look happy. Mark wanted to go into a few clubs on the island, but I've never been into that scene. There were loads of them. He wanted to go to one that was the biggest club in the world, but I didn't see the point in that. The queue to the bar would have been a nightmare. I'd prefer to go to the world's smallest bar. I keep seeing a lot of these big planes they are working on that can seat over 500 people. Again, not good. Imagine waiting to get your case off the carousel with all those people. Anyway, we didn't go to the club to hear the music. We could hear it banging on all night when we were back in the apartment. As I nodded off, after drinking 18 whiskies a day, and Mark fell asleep with the 8 of clubs in his left hand. The toilet was clear 2 days before we left.